these two persons, Isvara Puri and Ramachandra Puri, are examples of the object Vedanta. Vanchkalpaturabhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Sri Krishna. Interesting story, and it's a very educational story, and you're all educational types of people. So I think you'll find it interesting, relevant, practical, as well as just something very, very special spiritually. So we have these three people involved here. Madhavendra Puri, and then, well, next in fact, at least chronologically, is Ramachandra Puri, and then there's Isvara Puri. And Madhavendra Puri is the spiritual master, and Ramachandra. Don't sit there thinking, oh gosh, this again, or something like that. Just listen and try to absorb it, because it's a real classic in different ways, actually. So, right, Ramachandra Puri. Well, let me just mention regarding the verse itself, which we just read. Ramachandra Puri, he was a disciple, at least officially, of Madhavendra Puri, who was very, very great devotee from a couple of generations or so before Lord Chaitanya. So anyway, Madhavendra Puri, he really started, you could say, at least in a very sort of beginning type of stage, he started the movement of Lord Chaitanya, because he was the first one who started placing emphasis on the relationship between Srimati Radharani and Lord Krishna. Before that time, there was no emphasis, practically no, and from what I understand, actually, no emphasis on them at all. Even, in those days, Lakshmi Narayan were more accepted as the supreme manifestation of the Supreme Lord and his consort, but their relationship was not really emphasized so much in terms of it being like a deep, loving relationship. Even Sita and Ram, they're it's a kind of slightly distant relationship to some degree. She keeps at a distance. She's very much in the mood of just serving. It's not so much of an intimate relationship. And, I don't know if any of you from Tamil Nadu. Anyone from Tamil Nadu here? No? Okay. I would speak to you in Tamil if you were. There in Tamil Nadu is the biggest temple in India, at Sri Rangam, the temple of Lord Ranganath. And his consort Lakshmi is also there, but she is in a separate temple, and it's about 100 meters, or I don't know, maybe slightly more. It's way away from the temple of Ranganath. So, in that sense, the relationship is not really so close. But Madhavendra Puri started placing an emphasis on Radha and Krishna, and they're having a loving conjugal relationship. He started. Of course, Lord Chaitanya really brought it out. But Madhavendra Puri, he was like the very first wave. So Madhavendra Puri, he had these two disciples. He had many disciples. He had many disciples all over India. I don't know how many, but really a lot. Means like Advaita Acharya is at least sometimes spoken of as being a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. Lord Nityananda sometimes is spoken of in those terms. So he was really quite, a prominent figure and very powerful figure in our line, although particularly, specifically, he was more in the Sri Vaishnav line, kind of officially at least you could say. But Isvara Puri, of course, was in our line of Gaudiya Vaishnavas, and Ramachandra Puri. Anyway, let's say a few things about him. So now the thing is this, that before Isvara Puri enters the scene in the discussion here, in this 8th chapter of the Antya-lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's this whole situation with Madhavendra Puri and Ramachandra Puri, in that Madhavendra Puri is right in the last stages of his life, physically. In fact, so much so that he is just bedridden, totally immobilized, physically, totally not able to do anything for himself physically, couldn't even stand up. Yeah, so it had become clear that Madhavendra Puri was going to be leaving this world fairly soon. And therefore, like when Prabhupada was in that situation that devotees from all over the world started going to see him. Yeah, and it's only natural, very natural. Although Prabhupada said for the devotees not to come, but still quite a number came to see him in Vrindavan in those last days or few weeks. So a similar situation was there with Madhavendra Puri, that disciples and Ramachandra Puri was amongst them. He's a sannyasi, Ramachandra Puri. This title at the end, Puri, with Madhavendra Puri, now Ramachandra Puri, and then Isvara Puri. Puri is a title given to sannyasis, like Tirtha is another title given to sannyasis. I saw Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's picture there. So it's very common amongst the Mayavadis, but it's also used amongst the Vaishnavas, Tirtha, and in this case Puri. So now this Ramachandra Puri, he came to see his spiritual master, Madhavendra Puri. Now the thing is though that for different reasons, Ramachandra Puri had become sort of contaminated spiritually. Yeah, particularly he developed a very strong mood of criticism of devotees. he was relatively senior, not senior like Madhavendra Puri, who's probably 20 or 30 years older and been active for so many more years as a devotee. But he was relatively senior, Ramachandra Puri. And he developed this idea, that in order, he felt, this was his theory, in order to help devotees, he should point out things like shortcomings in those devotees. And he thought, this is good, because if devotees do something wrong, then it's good to point it out so they can come right and be corrected. But the problem was that he just got too much into it, and he became offensive. And because he became offensive, other types of deviant mentalities entered. It wasn't just that criticizing mentality, but because of it, other undesirable and wrong types of attitudes entered his heart and his mind, including some sort of attraction to impersonalism to some degree. Yeah. Anyway, he came to see Madhavendra Puri for the last time. And when he saw Madhavendra Puri, Madhavendra Puri is great devotee of Srimati Radharani and Lord Krishna. And he's just absorbed, deeply absorbed, completely absorbed in that mood of worshipping Radha and Krishna together as a transcendental couple. So when he arrived there, when Ramachandra Puri arrived there, Madhavendra Puri was in a mood, in this physically just very, very difficult condition. And in his heart and in his mind, he was feeling extremely deep separation and feeling in that the humility of love and separation. He was feeling like guilt, and he was feeling a sense of failure in a transcendental sense, not in like a real sense, like, maybe he had actually failed. He had definitely not failed, but he had feelings like that. And so he was regularly chanting different, very deep prayers to Radha and Krishna, and one of them in particular is quoted there in this chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita. I'll just read it. Aidina Dayajanathe, Mathura Natha Kadavalokise, Hridayantwada Loka Kataram, Dayata Brahmyati Kim Karomyaham, which means, O my Lord, O most merciful Master, O Master of Mathura, when shall I see you again? Because of my not seeing you, my agitated heart has become unsteady. O most beloved one, what shall I do now? Kim karomyaham. I'm sure. Well, it seems you're all North Indians, am I right? So Hindi speakers and, that's sorts of those types of languages. So you could probably follow the Sanskrit. And kim karom yaham. What can I do? What should I do? What am I to do now? Having, at least in terms of what he's saying, he says about himself that I am so fallen, I'm just so degraded, that if anyone simply hears my name, they become sinful. It's very extreme. None of us feel like that, do we? Do we? Well, we don't. You know, it may even be some of us sometimes think that we're a bit cool, you know, yeah, doing well in my studies, chanting my rounds. Anyway, maybe not you, but there's a little story. One time one devotee approached Prabhupada with the idea of trying to present himself in a very humble way. And he said to Prabhupada, you know, Srila Prabhupada, I am the most fallen. I am just the most fallen. Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada responded, actually, you are not the most anything. Prabhupada said, you are simply insignificant. Because, you know, to become the most anything in Krishna consciousness is, I think there's a lot of competition. To become the most fallen, the actual most fallen, you are competing against, you know, Hiranyakashipu, for example, Jagai and Madai and others. Oh, it's a big competition. I mean, there are many contenders for that title. So, right. So that's what Prabhupada said, that you're not the most anything, you're just insignificant. And that's really our situation, to be frank. So anyway, this was a situation with Ramachandra, with Madhavendra Puri. And he was really feeling like that, and he was crying. And other prayers also, similar, related types of prayers, but particularly this one, which Prabhupada explains. The source of this prayer, who was the one who sort of composed it, was actually Srimati Radharani herself. And there's only a handful. Well, there's only her and Madhavendra Puri, and later Lord Chaitanya himself, who repeated this prayer in really sort of like meaningful ways. So in came this Ramachandra Puri then, and there's Madhavendra Puri, physically helpless and spiritually just feeling like this, and kind of constantly or regularly at least lamenting in these types of terms. So Ramachandra Puri came in to pay his last respects, and he got an inspiration. I should do some service. He is my spiritual master after all. So let me do some service. Let me try and help him in this difficult condition he's in. And then he thought, well, how can I help him? What can I do? And, you know, coming from his contaminated consciousness came the idea, I know, I'll give him some good advice. That's what I'll do. So he said, Ramachandra Puri said to Madhavendra Puri, that, you know, why are you lamenting and crying like this? You know, the time of death is just around the corner. At this time, and this was the advice, you know what you should do? You should just fix your mind on Brahman. If you're experienced enough in Krishna consciousness, which I guess you are, then you would know this means he's suggesting something impersonal. He's got these rich, transcendental feelings of separation, but this fellow's telling him, just calm down, just cool down, and sort of control yourself and do something useful, like focus on the impersonal Brahman. So, we would all recognize, at least, those of us who've been practicing for some time, that this was extremely bad advice. In fact, it's really offensive. It's really extremely offensive. And Madhavendra Puri reacted in those terms. And he told him, just get out. Just go. Get out of my sight. If I happen to see you when I leave my body, when I pass away, if I happen to see you, I don't know where I'm going to go to. Yeah? But it won't be a good place. Right, so he told him, just get out, just go away, just leave now. And Ramachandra Puri, he left, but his mood, I don't know, I mean, I suppose we've all been chastised by someone in the past, even if it was maybe our parents or maybe, I don't know, just someone who doesn't like us, something like that. And when that happens, oftentimes the person who is chastised, they become angry. How can you speak to me like this? Don't you speak to me like this? This is wrong, this is bad. Don't be disrespectful to me. And that was the mood of Ramachandra Puri. And he was thinking, look, listen, spiritual master. I was trying to help you. You should thank me. Don't treat me like this. Naughty spiritual master. So then it's explained that already he was mixed up. He was really quite mixed up. But now he became, on the basis of this offense to his spiritual master, he became more mixed up. He became more critical. And he started becoming really more attached. Ramachandra Puri so much into criticizing that he achieved the level of nishta in criticism. Steady, unwavering, no ups and downs, just focused and fixed. Yeah. And he became so expert at finding faults with devotees. He became so expert, he could see faults in devotees which did not exist. This is very advanced level. So anyway, so off he went. Then Isvara Puri, just to mention Isvara Puri, because it's his disappearance day, he also came a little later, just really a little later. And he saw, there's my spiritual master. He's just totally physically incapacitated, cannot even stand up. what to speak of dress himself or, anything like that. So Isvara Puri took it upon himself to help Madhavendra Puri under those circumstances. So the Chaitanya Charitamrita describes how, Madhavendra Puri is just lying there in his bed and passing stool and urine and just unable to do anything about it at all. So Isvara Puri would clean it all up with his own hands. And while doing that, he was not thinking that, look at, what I've got to do. I'm a Brahmin, I'm a sannyasi, and this is so filthy. How did I get stuck with this job? He was ecstatic. And he was just chanting and singing bhajans and talking about Krishna to Madhavendra Puri. And, changing the clothes and washing the clothes and changing the sheets and just everything like that without complaining. In fact, he was ecstatic to be serving his spiritual master, even under such, really extreme circumstances. So, therefore, after a little while of this going on, Madhavendra Puri blessed Isvara Puri, may you become a great devotee and a great lover of God. And on the basis of that blessing, he was already a wonderful devotee, Isvara Puri, but he became just a super devotee to the point that eventually, after some time, he became the spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya. Or we should put it that Lord Chaitanya became inspired to accept him as his spiritual master. That's another story, actually. But that's the connection there. And this is why the verse I read at the beginning, it says that this whole pastime here is very educational. What are the results of, on one hand, in the case of Ramachandra Puri, offending the spiritual master, and on the other hand, in the case of Isvara Puri, pleasing the spiritual master very much. And these are things that we all, as aspiring devotees, we have to, really start to understand and appreciate and really try to avoid the negativity and cultivate really positive, humble service attitude towards the spiritual master. And actually I mentioned this morning, but I'll mention again here, how Srila Prabhupada had sort of a related interaction with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, his spiritual master. Maybe you know the story. It was at Altadanga Road, that property there which ISKCON is involved in or got control of, I'm not exactly sure, but definitely got involved in. So he was there, up on the roof. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was giving class at one end, down the other end is Prabhupada, right at the other end, and he's sitting there listening to the class, and there's one elderly devotee sitting next to Prabhupada whose hearing was not good. So every now and then, the elderly devotee would turn to Prabhupada and ask, what did he say? And Prabhupada would turn to him and say, well, he said this and this and this. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta noticed it, and he was not happy at all. And he said to Prabhupada, he said, Babu, Babu, would you like to come and sit here? Take my place. Would you like to speak? Can you imagine? Maybe there's 100 devotees there. What an embarrassing situation it must have been for Prabhupada. Everyone's looking at him like, wow, yeah. But the thing is, Prabhupada did not react like Ramachandra Puri, that, why are you speaking to me like that? Prabhupada could have said that, well, actually, I'm trying to help this devotee because he can't hear. And, so it's a service, which is true, very true. But he didn't, he just accepted it. And maybe that's one reason why Srila Prabhupada, a child starts crying. And Prabhupada didn't say anything, he just looked in the direction. And he was silent. Sometimes he'd tell the mother, keep the child quiet or take the child out. But he didn't, you can see him looking over there. And he's silent. And then the child is quiet and he carries on. And Hari Sori Prabhu, who you probably know, he told us that Prabhupada, when he was angry, he would say, why are you doing this? To correct the disciple. Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ki Jai. But when Prabhupada was very angry, he would not say anything. So anyway, Prabhupada, he received this public chastisement. And what a chastisement. Would you like to come and speak? But Prabhupada, as spiritual master, when he was, active preaching all around the world, he actually told his disciples about this incident, how he was embarrassed publicly and chastised publicly by his spiritual master. You might think that, a spiritual master would, when talking about his spiritual master to his own disciples, would just talk about sort of pleasant things and not like when I got chastised heavily. But Prabhupada told the story to his disciples. And Prabhupada said that not only did he tolerate this chastisement, even though, on a certain level, he could have explained it in a Krishna conscious type of way. But Prabhupada said he felt blessed, greatly blessed, for having been chastised like that. And Prabhupada said he would often think about it, what happened. And Prabhupada said that I treasured the thought. He treasured the thought, which is a very sort of deep sense of appreciation. Yes, okay, so there we are, devotees. And Ramachandra Puri, we're focusing on him, and off he goes with his life. Yeah, like I said, he was expert at criticizing, and he would say things like, well, you were sitting with your knee up a few minutes ago, right? Actually, I was present in Bhaktivedanta Manor when Prabhupada did one of his japa sessions with the devotees. Like 100 or more devotees sitting chanting japa with Prabhupada. And one devotee, he was sitting like that. And Prabhupada turned and famously, as he did on a number of other occasions, when he had Japa sessions and other places, Prabhupada said to him, sit properly. Yes, okay. So, right, there we are. And off goes Ramachandra Puri. And some time later, well, he was a sort of, Ramachandra Puri, he was a sort of person in an assembly of devotees, he'd say, like some of you, you're students, or maybe some of you are working and you don't have shaved heads. He was the sort of person who'd say, why have you not got your head shaved? What? You're enjoying having long hair. And if you had a clean, shaved head, he'd say, why have you shaved your head so that now it's shining? You're trying to show off like you're a big devotee. Lord Chaitanya has revealed himself, and he's now living in Jagannath Puri, and he's the big transcendental, I mean, at least like an acharya, and who should roll up in Jagannath Puri but take a guess, Ramachandra Puri. And what was his program? It describes there. He was just regularly checking everyone. And even particularly their eating habits. And there's a description, the first description there is of how one time Jagadananda Pandit, close associate of Lord Chaitanya, and he's living there in Jagannath Puri, he invited Ramachandra Puri, please come to my place for lunch. And so Ramachandra Puri came. And Jagadananda Pandit, who's great devotee, he's just really great devotee. He's serving Jagannath Mahaprasadam until Ramachandra Puri says, okay, thank you, that's enough. Okay, that's enough, thank you. Thank you very much. But Ramachandra Puri said, what? What? Are you refusing Jagannath Mahaprasadam? What sort of devotee are you? Are you really a devotee? And Jagadananda, he felt pressured, so he said, oh, okay, I'll take some more. So Ramachandra Puri served him more. And after a while, Jagadananda said, that's it. I just cannot take more. And Ramachandra Puri said, I have heard that the followers of this Chaitanya eat too much. And today I have seen it with my own eyes. So, you couldn't win. Either this way or that way. You just couldn't win with him. Yeah, and he would always embarrass the devotees and just make them feel very awkward and chastise them. And he would, well, we mentioned he was particularly, watching everyone. And the eating habits. How many chapatis? 2, 3 chapatis. It was like he had a little notebook, such and such. What's your name, Prabhu?
Saurabh.
Huh?
Saurabh.
Saurabh. Saurabh. 3 chapatis. 3 exclamation marks. So then he turned his attention to Lord Chaitanya, because that was ultimately his plan, because Lord Chaitanya is the leader. So one day, it's lunchtime. Lunchtime has just come. And Govinda, Lord Chaitanya's personal servant's just about to serve him Lord Chaitanya Prasadam, when who should come along but Ramachandra Puri? And Lord Chaitanya, of course, said, oh, please, because, technically Ramachandra Puri is like spiritually a generation senior. He's also materially a generation senior, older. And he is a godbrother of Lord Chaitanya's spiritual master. So, he's really higher level in that technical type of sense. So Lord Chaitanya asked, oh, please come and sit down. We will serve you prasadam. And Ramachandra Puri said, no, it's okay, don't worry. I just came for the association. So there he is. And Govinda is serving Lord Chaitanya different items. And Ramachandra Puri, I don't think he really had a notebook. And then one day he stumbled on something which he thought was like evidence of Lord Chaitanya's some sort of illicit eating habits. He saw a little string of ants walking along on one side. And, his ability to see fault, as we mentioned, he was so expert he could see fault even when it didn't exist or where it didn't exist. It's highly advanced. And immediately, aha! Ants. Ants are here. This means this sannyasi has been eating sweets. Oh, Krishna, Krishna. Ah, what a disaster. It's Kali Yuga. So that was it. He started now accusing Lord Chaitanya. So Lord Chaitanya actually he wasn't eating sweets, but this like serious chastisement was going on. So Lord Chaitanya cut his eating in half. And when all the devotees, the associates of Lord Chaitanya, heard about this and saw this, they also cut their eating in half. And then eventually, to a quarter, Lord Chaitanya cut his eating. And take a guess what happened, devotees. Anyway, I'll tell you. A few days later, some days later, Ramachandra Puri came and saw that Lord Chaitanya had actually transcendentally done this. Another chastisement. And the devotees heard about this. And then there was Paramananda Puri and Brahmananda Bharati. They were also godbrothers of Isvara Puri. They were also disciples of Madhavendra Puri. So they met with Lord Chaitanya and they explained that, there are two rules. One is you shouldn't criticize anyone. The other is you shouldn't glorify anyone. But the rule of not glorifying anyone can be broken. It's okay to break that rule. But the rule of not criticizing anyone, you shouldn't break, a person must not break that rule. But look at this Ramachandra Puri and just see what he's doing. So they're trying to encourage Lord Chaitanya, and they're also his seniors, that, don't worry about this man, just don't listen to him. But Lord Chaitanya, in the mood of like a very humble sadhaka, Lord Chaitanya said, in front of him, I'm just like a young boy. And he's trying to help me. So I'm accepting it like that. Anyway, Ramachandra Puri, he was a traveling mendicant. He would come stay for a while somewhere, then move on. So after a while, he moved on from Jagannath Puri. And when he did, all the devotees had a festival. And sometimes when a devotee's been part of a temple for some years and done a lot of service and been really nice, so the devotees have a sort of going away party sort of thing. And they express appreciation and have a feast and all that sort of thing. But that's honoring the devotee. Anyway, devotees. Let me just mention, you're all familiar with the story, right? More or less or more. There is an aspect to it that you may also be aware of, or you might not. And in fact, the devotees in Newtown asked about this morning in regards to Ramachandra Puri. Someone asked what happened to him, because he was offensive. He was really offensive. And others who were really offensive, like, say, to Haridas Thakur, that, what was his name, Gopal Chakravarti, offended Haridas Thakur, and he got, what's the disease? Leprosy, and his nose fell off. Yeah. So the devotee asked, so what happened to Ramachandra Puri? Surely something like that happened. They actually don't know what happened because there's no further mention of him, at least as far as we're aware. But having said that, there's another side to the story, and it's a very transcendental side, is that Ramachandra Puri is also an associate of Krishna in Krishna Leela, in Vrindavan Leela. And there in Vrindavan Leela, he is Jatila. Have you heard of Jatila? Yeah. You heard of Jatila? She is the cranky mother-in-law of Srimati Radharani, who's always trying to stop Krishna from meeting Radharani. Yeah. And she's Jatila because she has a big jat. You know what a jat is? Like the sadhus sometimes do. They mix, maybe glue or maybe tree resin. They mix, they have long hair, like really long, and sort of all over the place. So they mix stuff in it to keep it in one place. So she is Jatila. She has the best jat. And don't any of you try to do that. And when you do that, if you put glue or resin or something like that, that's it. That's it. You can't just take some conditioner, shampoo and conditioner, and just wash it out. It's permanent. And all you can do is sort of let it grow out and then cut it off. But that's all you can do. Otherwise, that's it. You got it. And it's got you. So anyway, there you go, devotees. And of course, the message is, obviously, as the verse that we initially read said, that these two are examples. They're showing us what happens to a person who offends the spiritual master and to a person who really pleases the spiritual master. Yeah. So I see a lot of photos there. I guess quite a number of you have spiritual masters. Anyway, maybe some of you don't. But, you could say, that's true. But just any devotees, we should be very careful, very respectful. And even if a devotee does something wrong, I mean, unless it's something, really kind of stupid, like smoking a cigarette or something like that, something extreme. But if a devotee just makes some silly mistake or does something kind of eccentric or, foolish, and like not really devious and anti-Krishna consciousness. But if a devotee just makes a mistake, even if a devotee does something a bit silly, we shouldn't make a big issue of it. We should tolerate, because they're devotees. Yeah, they're devotees, and they're trying their best usually, but of course sometimes, particularly in the earlier days, sometimes a person has a bad day or just kind of slips up in some way or gets disturbed somehow or other, and they do something they wouldn't normally do. We shouldn't make big issues of these things. Rather, we should tolerate them. And, if they're disturbed, we should try and encourage them. But at least we shouldn't chastise them just for doing something a bit silly or, a momentary kind of mistake. And if you see it, one of the devotees smoking a cigarette or doing something which is clearly not on, then we may try and correct or inform Prabhuji, and Prabhuji can intervene and help the devotee. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Now, hang on, just don't move. Because they told me, that's why I'm here. They told me that the devotees in, what's it called, Khadagpur, I got it right, Khadagpur, are very intelligent. And very, like they take their Krishna consciousness very seriously, and they're very thoughtful about these things. That sort of thing. And therefore, they have many questions. That's the bottom line I'm coming to. Yeah, that's what they told me. So I wonder, does anyone have a question or comment or some point they'd like to raise? Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my apologies. Maharaj, you were telling, Ramachandra Puri, when he was, spiritual master was on his deathbed, when she was undergoing various phases. So at the time he wanted to help the spiritual master. He was in the mood of, how can I serve? Even in general, many of the devotees, they say that whatever the position we may be in, we should be looking, how can we serve? In that mood, we are to...
Well, Isvara Puri didn't ask, he just saw he needs this help. So he could have done something like that. But he did something which came out of his contaminated consciousness. Yeah. Which was offensive. Yeah. So, yeah, it's like a real distortion of some sort of relative of a serving mood. It's not like a real, genuine serving mood. TK? Yeah. So you think, how can I help him? I know. I'll kill the dog and cook it up. It's not going to work, is it? It's not going to work at all. It's because it's just...
We need to cross-check.
Well, you can do. You know, you can ask a devotee, is there anything I can do for you? I'd like to render some service. Please tell me what I can do for you. The problem with that is, so many devotees, particularly if they've been around for some time and they sort of understand how Krishna consciousness works, then they're going to say, no, I'm okay. I don't need anything. So, but then that shouldn't put you off. Then what you should do is, you should observe and then see. And because everyone could use some help in some way or another. Yeah. And just see. And it may take a little while to see that they could use some help, some assistance in some way. So then when you see, then you can do some service for them. Yeah. Hare Krishna. Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you for your wonderful class. I have a question, like you gave the example of Jagannatha Pandit and Ramachandra Puri, that Ramachandra Puri served the lunch, but then when Jagannatha Pandit was not taking it, he was saying that it is Jagannath's Pradhan, how can you not take it? And then after he took it, then he said that, okay, you have eaten so much. So, just before this, you gave an example which I found analogous, like Prabhupada saying that your hairs are too long when they keep their hair, and
But not Prabhupada, Ramachandra Puri.
no, my hairs are too long and
That's the sort of thing, if Ramachandra Puri was sitting here tonight, he'd be looking around. Are you sure you're a devotee or what are you? You call yourself a devotee? Ramachandra Puri would do that. Although Srila Prabhupada did actually occasionally say that.
yeah, so I want to know the mood of Prabhupada saying that, because in case of Ramachandra Puri, it is clear that it was in a bad way, but what was the mood of Prabhupada?
See, Prabhupada, he understood that when the devotees, if some devotee or when some devotee was growing here, that it was like coming from the old, what we used to call hippie seeds. That's where it was coming from. It's like an old habit from, because so many, practically all, but at least 90% of all the male devotees in Prabhupada's time, they were from hippie backgrounds. And part of being a hippie is you have to have long hair. If you don't have long hair, you're just out crowd. You're just out of it. So therefore all the young men had long hair. But then they became devotees and shaved their heads. So, particularly when devotees would grow their hair and there was no need to do it, but they would maybe try to give an excuse, then Prabhupada would sometimes point it out, that these are your hippie seeds just coming through again. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Why did Ramachandra Puri when he was approaching Mahaprabhu only with the fault-finding mentality.
Well, Lord Chaitanya was being very humble and taking himself to be junior, and which is another type of example in a sense. Yeah, so he didn't, even when Paramananda Puri and I think it was Brahmananda Bharati were explaining like that to him, that this fellow, he's just a big problem case. And it's not like he is actually trying to help anyone. It's just he's nasty. But Lord Chaitanya took it in a very humble way that, he's my senior and he's trying to help me. So he didn't sort of confront Ramachandra Puri. And actually the others, the God brothers, Paramananda Puri, they also didn't confront Ramachandra Puri. But as we mentioned, when Ramachandra Puri left, it was a great day. It was a very peaceful day. And everyone, Lord Chaitanya went back to his usual practices of eating, and so did all the devotees, because all the devotees also, they reduced their eating in the same ways.
One related question to this, how did Ramachandra Puri got the opportunity? He did not get any service to Mahaprabhu. Completely, he did not render any services.
There's the Leela aspect to the whole thing, because he is Jatila. He is a resident of Vrindavan. He's not just some renegade conditioned soul. Because even that Jatila, it looks like she hates Krishna. In fact, she talks like she hates Krishna. I just don't want to see this Krishna. But it's based on her love for Radharani. Yeah, as mother-in-law, she really feels she wants to protect her son's wife. Yeah. So, yeah, it's not like she is some sort of, what would you call it? Someone who doesn't fit into Krishna Leela, somehow or other broke into Krishna Leela. No, she is actually a devotee, but a very special, extraordinary type of devotee. And even Narada Muni, he says that people like Shishupal, who hated Krishna, Narada Muni said that people like Shishupal and Kamsa, their attachment to Krishna seems stronger than the attachment of the devotees to Krishna. And he even advises that it may be a good idea to hate Krishna. But then our acharyas say, not a good idea. It's just he's speaking like that in his mood of ecstasy. There was someone else. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you for your wonderful verse. So my question is that, somebody do offense his first time.
Someone what?
Do offense first
offense.
time. If he see the Ramchandra Puri, if he take any devotee, so it seems like he don't have any hope after that, because once he commits an offense, then he will continue doing that, because now his mind is or intelligence is corrupted.
Mm-hmm.
So is there hope or not?
Well, there can be. That's a good point. Because we're all coming from conditioned backgrounds. And that means becoming offensive, at least sometimes, is sort of part of our conditioning. But the thing is this, that we're living, well, as long as we're living in the company of devotees, then there's a chance, because the devotees will see that, this particular devotee helped me with a bad habit of mine, then the devotee will respond positively. Yes. A very interesting little case I can mention to you is that in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam, I'm sure many of you at least have heard about this, the story of Bharat Maharaj, who in his next life took the body of a deer, because in the life as Bharat, he became attached to a deer. So the thing is, Srila Jiva Goswami explains that when he left home, he was the king of the world, but he just left everything, and he was deeply attached to Krishna. But somehow, due to some previous offense, Jiva Goswami explains, and we don't know what that offense was, but there must have been some offense. When he left home, he didn't go and stay in an ashram with other devotees. He just had his own little ashram. So there was no one there to help him when, he went off track. Like initially when the little baby deer was there. Normally someone would tell him, come on, don't get so carried away with this deer. But there was no one to do that. And therefore he just went more and more deeply into it. And in his next life, he took birth as a deer. So therefore, what I was saying was, as long as we're in the company of devotees, in fact, Lord Chaitanya, is it Lord Chaitanya? I think it must be, talking about how to be protected from like the from offenses. He says that we should remain with a fence of devotees around us, and they will protect us, like circled by devotees, and that'll be like a protective fence to keep the offensive tendencies away. So that's why it's really good here. There's so many of you who are devotees, and different devotees are on different levels, of course, that's just natural. But at least you've basically got a group of devotees here. And you can kind of keep an eye on each other. Yeah. And even sometimes, not just sometimes, but it's very good to have a mentor who you're in touch with on a regular basis, and who's not afraid to tell you that, look, you're doing something wrong now, so you must stop it. And if the mentor is the type who always pats you on the head and says, oh, good devotee, nice devotee, good boy, or good girl, that's not such a good type of mentor. But when you've got a mentor who will point out when you're doing something wrong, you need that sort of mentor. Or at least a group of devotees who, when they see things going off track, they will do something about it. Hare Krishna. Haribol, the back row.
question was thank you very much for the wonderful explanations. I had a question regarding DTs. That like what can we like do to increase our relationship with the DTs and make it more personal and deep? Because sometimes we might be living very close to DTs or in the temple, and we might take them cheaply granted. So what can be done, maybe on a regular basis or something?
Okay. We should do some service. That's our process. The development of relationships, like with Isvara Puri, he did service to a spiritual master. The relationship became very deep. And even Prabhupada makes the point, it's in the Lilamrita, that in the old days in India, as I recall, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his first wife, she died after some time, and he remarried. But the first wife he married, when she was from time to time, not like every six, that stage, but she that historically in India, there were no divorce. That historically in India, there were no divorce laws because they were not required. Because nobody wanted to divorce. And that was one of the great contributions. Anyway, so to speak, of the British. They noticed, so to speak, of the British. They noticed, hey, there's no divorce laws here. Oh, we've got to introduce some divorce laws. And then everything sort of started going downhill. Yeah. But that's how Prabhupada describes it. So it's through the girl rendering service that their relationship would develop and become so deep by the time they actually came together as a family unit that it was just like unbreakable. Literally, it was unbreakable. Like there are no laws. I don't know. Think of some sort of law. Crazy law. There's no law that you can't swim in the sea. Anyway, I don't know. But they don't make laws for like irrelevant things. You know, they only make laws for relevant things. So it was irrelevant in those days because that was the practice. And through that, the girl and the boy would develop such strong attachment, like I said, unbreakable, that even when if the husband died before his wife, she would willingly just walk into the cremation fire, literally, sit down and just get burnt up. Yeah. And she didn't have to be thrown in or something like that, as eventually started happening. Hare Krishna. I met one man many years ago, probably about 30 years ago. I was on a train from Jaipur to Delhi. And this one man, like a business type man, probably 40, 50 years old, we were just talking, preaching to him a bit, and he, somehow the subject came up and he said, yes, my mother was a sati. And you can see he was proud of it. Another time I was in, if you're familiar with, do you know Unchigaon? The place of Lolita.
Yes.
We were in Unchigaon, and this one young girl, cowherd girl, she was like 10 years old or something, she invited a couple of us to her house, just right next to the temple, more or less, within 25 meters or so. So we went there and the mother was there and she gave us chas, buttermilk. So we're drinking away and she's talking away to us in Hindi, and my Hindi is not the best at all, but at one point the subject came up and she said, yes, my daughter, pointing to the girl, she will be a sati. And the girl went like, what are you talking about? Okay, Hari.
2 years back in Sridhammayapur. 2 years back in Sridhammayapur. And that's great fortune that we are getting this opportunity. So thank you so much, Maharaj. My question is how to avoid criticism and increase cooperation to keep Prabhupada in the center and serve in the mission.
I didn't quite get that. Can you just say it again?
How to avoid criticism.
Avoid criticism.
And cooperate with each other. And how to always keep Srila Prabhupada's pleasure in the center, because that goes off.
Okay, well, to avoid criticism, I mentioned we should become tolerant towards like silly mistakes and or even like eccentricities if someone's a bit, we're all a bit eccentric in one way or another. But not get like, what's he doing, what's she doing? But just understand, it's just the way things are sometimes. Or, if they make a real mistake, then nicely we can point it out and they'll say, oh yeah, right, thank you. So we should cultivate that sort of mood. But even having said that, it's based on, the basis of it is that we have to accept devotees as devotees. Means that they're very good people. They have made a decision, an extremely rare decision. How many people in khadagpur? And how many devotees. You could look at any city in those terms. Yeah, so devotees are very special. But then we need to cultivate like an attitude, a perspective on devotees to see their good qualities. We have this tendency to see bad qualities or faults in others and see ourselves as being good. This is just normal conditioned tendency. But we need to cultivate, because it's kind of opposed to our conditioned nature, we need to cultivate a perspective and an attitude of seeing the good things, the good parts of a devotee. Don't just take it for granted. But it needs to be cultivated because it's kind of contradictory to our conditioned nature. But, you can cultivate these things and they become like ingrained within us. So we should do like that, because after all, Krishna consciousness is about us changing, not just remaining the same people we were, back when we were in ordinary everyday life. We must change. Yeah. So we should really do like that. And that will help if we get into the practice of doing it in a genuine way. That will really help us. And the devotees who we're appreciating, if we, not like in, if you know what I mean, a patronizing way, like sort of overdoing it, but just occasionally, we express appreciation that, you know, if it's a cook, oh, you cooked this or that nicely. Or if it's a kirtan leader, oh, you know, you led the kirtan nicely, etc., etc. You know, these sorts of ideas. Then they, if it's done in a sincere way, they will appreciate us. Yeah. And in this way we can create a really nice atmosphere. And it can grow and develop and become an amazing atmosphere, actually. Yeah. And you know, like keeping Prabhupada in the center as sort of kind of a separate thing, you could say. I mean, of course it's connected. But, you know, what's an extremely good idea, at least for helping us individually, is to read all the biographies. You know, there's loads of biographies now. And another one just came out a couple of days ago. And it's the latest, the last, the last volume in Hari Sori Prabhu's Transcendental Diary. Just came out a couple of days ago in Mayapur. So we should get them all and read them all, and even have readings with the devotees, yeah. But at least us as individuals, we should do that, because some of these biographies are just amazing. And they're really very revealing, in the sense of revealing sides of Prabhupada to us that, like, particularly if you never met Prabhupada personally, that you're just never going to really be aware of. You know, like maybe 10% at least of our reading time, or, you know, that sort of thing, to studying these authoritative literatures and discussions about Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada really becomes a person to us, or we really start to appreciate him as a person. Makes a big difference. Yes, some of these. You know, this last one of Harisori Prabhu's is very nice. Giriraj Maharaj wrote, I forget the name, I will build you a temple. It is amazing. It's truly amazing. In terms of, you know, presenting Prabhupada, making Prabhupada visible to us. Oh yeah. And the others also, Prabhupada in Germany, then there's Prabhupada in England, there's Prabhupada in Australia and New Zealand, and I'm there too. That time when I first saw Prabhupada at the university is described here. Yeah, and then there's Prabhupada in Malaysia, and then, you know, Hayagriva, who sort of went off track, but he wrote an interesting thing. Achyutananda wrote an interesting book. And like this, Prabhupada ceases to be a sort of distant, you know, highly respectable, but still distant authority type of figure. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So anyway, tomorrow